Next time on CatSpan. He's one of the most prolific performers and collaborators in the music business today, with a storied career going back to age 15 and a top 40 single with his band, The Livewires. Ned Albright has propelled himself up to the top of the music charts with some of the most famous artists of our time, producing and writing for Glenn Campbell, Gladys Knight, and Dolly Parton, also lending his skills and talents to Dusty Springfield, Leland Sklar, Herman Matthews, and working alongside Olivia Newton-John, Don McLean, and countless others, including Cat Beach, whether creating greetings from Jamaica with the Tidbits or spending time in New Orleans with the legendary Alan Toussaint. Ned's worked with the greatest icons in the industry. Producer, vocalist, musician, songwriter, arranger, or recording artist. Join Ned as he chats with Nashville singer-songwriter Cat Beach as they announce the long-awaited album from the one and only Ned Albright this Friday evening on CatSpan.
This is important. So for those of you who did not hear us, first off, was it from the very top that we didn't, so I can communicate with everybody? Okay, so here's where everybody can ask live questions to Ned, and so you can go to the link below YouTube, and underneath our the live video, and ask questions, and please do, because he's got lots of stories. What we started off with, and I'm sure you guys just saw us mouthing like you can't hear us. We had a little audio issue, but I asked Ned. Probably one of the things that shocked me, because he was 15 years old when this happened, and when doing my research, and I've known him for a long time, and doing my research, Ned, tell everybody about the Livewires again. So it's like take two.
Yeah. Okay. So just a short story on the Livewires, because it was kind of a short story, is that we were a high school band. One of the players in our band had a celebrity TV dad, and he got us a record deal. They put us with 3 great producers and a couple of good songwriters, and we recorded the 2 songs. They let us do some of the work, and they also beefed it up with some serious studio guys from New York. And it came out great, and you can still see it on YouTube. It's called the Livewires. One is called The Mask, and the other is called Keep It to Yourself.
Keep It to Yourself. Okay.
Yeah. And they're both, they're very young and lively records. They reflect the time really well. And those guys had made a lot of hits. They did Hang On Sloopy. They did a bunch of big hits, those guys.
Okay, so tell me some. Let's move forward a little bit. So for people that don't know, Ned is in Los Angeles now, but he started in New York City, and so that's where this all began. Fast forward into let's fast forward into your 20s. So you're 15, you get a top 40 hit. That's fantastic. So you're rushed into that wonderful experience, and I'm sure there was a lot of good, bad, and ugly that went around it. But fast forward into, am I over striking it by talking about hair?
Well, that I'm gonna do a short ramp up to that because it deserves it.
Yeah.
I was in a group called Boys and Girls Together, and one of our singers, we were all 4. It was a 2 girls, 2 guys singing group, and we got a little record deal because we were good. One of the singers in the band was a girl named Victoria Medlin, who later would be the person that I went to New Orleans with. So that it kind of, one thing I'll tell you about this interview is I was like reviewing some of the facts in my life. I realized that, everyone will tell you life is about relationships. And in my story, you will find a thread of people that showed up, disappeared, showed up again, disappeared, showed up again. And so I have a history of, and I've been really lucky in that way, because the people like that, a lot of them are just unbelievable people. I had a lot of help to do everything I've done.
Yeah.
So that's really where it's at. So anyway, Victoria Medlin, you were asking about hair. So Victoria Medlin was the leading lady in Hair on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
And I had seen that play before because in my last experience at high school, one of the girls from my class was in the original show, which was downtown at the Shakespearean Theater in the Village. And so I had seen the show, but a couple of years later, it was on Broadway, and my friend Victoria Medlin, and collaborator on a lot of stuff, wound up being the leading lady of Hair. And that kind of dovetailed into other things. That was going on when I was working for Jeff Barry. And that was when I was working with the Monkees and the Archies and Bobby Bloom and Andy Kim, Robin McNamara, just a ton of, we made records every day. In that time period, Kat, I was going to the studio at 10 a.m., working till 5 p.m. Then I would have some dinner and we would go downtown because we were moonlighting at a place called No Soap Radio. And we were making records on in a four-track studio in Greenwich Village and doing that till, 3 in the morning.
3 in the morning.
catch a little sleep, come back and go to the studio. It was, that was my day job was working on those records. My night job was working on my own creative pursuit.
Which it seems like that's with a lot of artists right now, but differently in that they don't get to do the day job. Now, in that, is it writing, composition? That day job, was it writing? What was the...
Yeah, the day job was writing, producing, and occasionally, like we made records as artists. My good friend Stephen Souls and I, who later was in the Tidbits with me, Stephen and I were two of the writers on Jeff Barry's staff. And so we worked together and we would write these songs and sing them together. And Jeff Barry said, "You guys are an act, let's record." So we recorded a record as Albright and Souls. But my partner, Stephen, I think he felt that Jeff wasn't paying enough attention to us. And he said, we should, our night gig was where we really got to do whatever we wanted. Yeah. And so we formed the Tidbits at that time. And this is all happening while Victoria is in Hair.
And by the way, please let people know, because a lot of people don't know the musical Hair. Some who are listening know Hair, but tell them what Hair was about, so they understand that time and era.
This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
Aquarius.
Right. That says it all there.
Yeah, it was a huge show. And it's also the reason why we wound up going to New Orleans was that the guy who represented Victoria, also as a lawyer, also represented Alan Toussaint. And he arranged for us to have a audition, which is a very funny story I could tell you quickly.
I want to know.
So we flew down to New Orleans on the morning plane. By lunchtime, we were sitting with Alan Toussaint, and he wanted to hear the songs we had. We had written 20 songs to play for him. We took about a month and wrote 20 songs that we thought, we think he'll like these.
Why?
We knew him from sitting in Ya Ya and The Name of the Places I Like It Like That and Mother-in-Law, a lot of oldies that were huge. He also wrote Java. He wrote Yes We Can for the Pointer Sisters. We knew him as a very, funky cat, which he was, but he was also a genius and one of the smartest and most literate and most incredibly intelligent guys I've ever met. And he was a musical genius.
Unreal. Yeah.
Anyway, so we had our meeting with him. So we would play him a song, and he'd say he had a very calm way about him. He'd say, "Do you have another?" And so we'd say, sure. So we'd play song 2. And after that, "Do you have another?" And so we played all 20. And after each one, he asked if we had another. So when we got to number 20, because usually in an audition, you do 2 to 3 songs and get out of here, buddy, or we love you, we'll hire you.
Yeah.
But anyway, we did all 20. And each one, he didn't even crack a smile. He just asked if we had another. So at any rate, finally, after the 20th one, I looked up at him. I said, "Nope, that's all we got." And Victoria said to him, "Hey, what about that tune that you wrote the other day at the bar?" And I said, "Oh, he won't like that. It's kind of a country song. I don't think he'll dig that." And so Alan said, "What's the title?" And I said, "It's called Bad Apples Make the Best Wine." And he went nuts.
That's
and
awesome.
He started walking around the room. He got the engineer, set up the mics. Let's hear it. And Vicky didn't know the song. So I was the original demo singer, and I sang Bad Apples Make the Best Wine, and they recorded it just to document it. And sure enough, we went upstairs. He offered us a contract to make an album. He then took us to a concert where I met and heard Professor Longhair and the Meters. So those are 2 iconic New Orleans music groups. So the best was the king of all piano players, aside from James Booker. But at any rate, these were all legendary guys, and Alan Toussaint was our window into that world.
Oh, wild.
And Alan became a lifelong friend.
Yeah.
So till the day he died, Alan Toussaint was one of the most important people in my life.
Yeah. Is there something just about him, if it were just maybe one sentence you could tell people, aside from being a genius, that you loved about his character? Was he funny? What was, because most people don't know of him, by the way.
He was funny as hell, but he was smart as hell, but he was very low key. And I think I can maybe best talk about his personality, because we had the most incredible food. We had it catered by some, New Orleans woman that just catered for the studio. And the food was the best food I have ever had. We would all go nuts every night. It was like, oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
Fucking gumbo. Oh my God. Those crawfish were amazing. And all the great New Orleans dishes, we had them every night. And she was so creative and so good. At any rate, we would all sit, the Meters, I would sit downstairs with the guys who played, the Meters. Yeah. And they were great people and an unbelievable band, unbelievable. Yeah. And we would sit there eating and oohing and eyeing, and everybody would going, oh shit, oh fuck, this is the best food. Anyway, one day Alan Toussaint came down the stairs, and Art Neville looked at him and said, oh, Alan, what about that peach cobbler, man? That peach cobbler, what about that peach cobbler? We're all like going, oh man, we're all groaning. It was so good. And Alan looks up and he said,
what did he say?
It was very nice. And Art Neville looked at him and said, fuck, Alan, how can you be so cool?
I have a I have a kind of a 6 degrees connection to Alan through somebody that came to me for a website, was one of his girlfriends.
Ah,
Okay, so she claimed that was her claim, and she has pictures and her eating dinner with him, etc. So I know it wasn't a false claim. Really nice gal, and she has her own albums and stuff out. And that was she was in a relationship with him. I don't know what the time frame was or any of that, but that was a weird 6 degrees kind of
Six
moment there.
degrees of
Yeah,
separation.
yeah.
That is, all through all through when I talk about where I've been and what I've done, it's 6 degrees of separation. There's always some connection. I'll give you an example. When I was in the Boys and Girls Together, I had a day job or a night job as a delivery boy for a deli in New York. And one day I delivered to the Beatles. I walked up to the building and there were screaming girls all around the building and they had big security. I had to make sure I had make sure I was the right guy bringing up sandwiches, all that kind of stuff. They were nice. They said, bring it in. I brought it up, set it up, thank you. And later I played on what I'd like to call a disastrous recording of Stand By Me with John Lennon. So in later, the 6 degrees of separation is always in effect.
That's true.
You just never know why you meet certain people or how they whether they will have a recurring role in your life.
Yeah. They're starting to go.
You're in Los Angeles now, and so I'm sure you have a lot of those kind of serendipitous moments bumping into people out there. I'm sure, especially with you working in the industry, obviously that's going to happen.
Well, that's what LA is. I try to hide out as much as I can. But when I do go out, and out here you don't face the music, you face the traffic.
Yeah.
And so when I'm out, I'll be riding along and, oh gosh, any number. The other day I drove up to a intersection and there was a woman who drove up in a Mercedes in the turning lane, and it was Charlize Theron, the movie.
Oh gosh.
And I'm looking,
nice.
She drives up and I'm going, ooh, that chick is great looking. And then I looked a little closer and it was her.
And you're like, oh, that's awesome.
That was a Hollywood moment,
to the crazy. I want to take you, because I know we have limited time.
Yeah.
I want to take you. So we were in Louisiana for the moment.
Yeah.
I think you popped back to New York. I really would. I'd love to discuss some of the Dusty Springfield moments in your life, and the reason. I know "Son of a Preacher Man," and a lot of people may know that song, and not some of the people listening may not know Dusty Springfield, but I know that you wrote "I'll Be Faithful."
Yes.
I'd love to. I just want to hear. It skipped my brain. It made me curious.
Well, you have a good curiosity, because that song. I have a few songs that have really opened up portals in my life, and "I'll Be Faithful" is one of them. It wound up on Dusty Springfield's Greatest Hits album, even though it was never released.
Wow.
And when they originally put the writer's credit on the record, which we had to correct, was writers unknown.
Oh, unreal! Because I've listened to the song a couple of times, love it, and writers, isn't that lovely?
Okay, but now it all straightened up. So let me tell you the ballad of the song "I'll Be Faithful." And so the way it starts is I was, like any other day, I was strumming on my guitar and I came up with a few chords and I thought of some words. And when in those days, I had a first verse and a chorus. And in those days, we would go to the office and my friend Stephen Souls and his brother Michael, who was also a writer there. The three of us sat and we finished the song. So there wasn't much to finish, but it was a second verse. And so the song was done, and people seemed to like it. And Jeff said to us, "Hey, you guys sound great singing that song. Why don't we record that as Albright and Souls?" And so we said, "Great, fine." So we made a record of it. As a matter of fact, one of the guys who played was a guy who wound up playing on the Ned album. And he was one of the keyboard players in Bruce Springsteen's band.
Oh.
Oh God, I'm blanking on it.
That's okay, because I've got the Ned album right here.
Roy. What was Roy's last name? You're gonna
Hold
see.
on.
Alligator. Roy. That's Oregon. Roy.
It's okay, because I'm gonna see it right now.
Okay.
It's Gator. It's the alligator song. The Gator song.
Yeah, yes, he played on the Gator song. Roy.
Doggone it.
You'll see it in the credits. It'll probably Roy Bittman.
Oh wait, Gia was on vocals here.
Yes, Gia was.
Wait,
on,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm looking at it, y'all. I didn't know Gia was on there.
Gia Shambodia is another reoccurring figure.
She's awesome. We
met,
love her.
Yeah, I met Gia singing backgrounds on a guy from Lone Justice, Ryan Hedgecock. And he made a record, and Gia, I played piano, and Gia and I did the backgrounds. So that's, that was how I met Gia. And then later on, when I made the Ned album, I used Gia and Sharon Ceylani, who sings with Fleetwood Mac. So Gia and Sharon were my singers on the Ned album.
I'll be darned. This is
so
much.
I also had Amy
it, so shame on me for Roy. I can't see it, but I guess.
Yeah.
Hey Ned, real quick.
Yes, sir.
You talked a little bit about your past in New York. At what point did you go to LA? What was the big move there?
The big move there was in 1982, because all the while that I was having this incredibly, charmed life, I was also developing a really bad heroin habit. And I was going to my method, and I wasn't the only one, because my methadone clinic, every day I would see James Taylor, Dr. John, Tim Harden, and a bunch of jazz guys. It was well populated.
Yes.
So let me I'll tell you the quick, I'll be faithful. I'm going to cut to how that went. So
because I'd love for you to sing it too. But
I will. We recorded it, and nothing happened. And Jeff wound up using it with Dusty Springfield. Meanwhile, Stephen and I were producing a record in Woodstock with a folk duo named Artie and Happy Traum, and they wanted them to be more of a pop thing. So they hired us to produce, and we did. And over that weekend, it was like, I think it was between Christmas and New Year's, every rock star in the world was in Woodstock. And, it was the band, and Chris Christopherson and Van Morrison and on and on. Anyway, one night in the studio, we were listening to the playback of the Artie and Happy record, and I wandered into the studio to, because I'd heard the song a million times. When you produce a record, you hear it over and over and over and over again. I had heard it for 3 days, and I'd had quite enough. Yeah. And I went out to this studio and started playing "I'll Be Faithful" on the piano. And all by himself, all alone, Bob Dylan walked in, pulled up a chair, and sat down beside me on the piano. And then those guys, we started to play together, and he walked over to the organ and started playing Hammond organ.
Oh my God.
I was playing piano. Now the band comes in, all of the celebrity rock stars are all in the room. Everybody picks up something to play, and it sounds like a love fest because it's a 3-chord song.
And somebody hit record, please, somebody.
Right? So we say to the Dylan, Bob Dylan, and if you know what he sounds like, my impression is this. Dylan stands up because we're playing it and it sounds great. And Dylan stands up and goes, "Hey, let's record this song. It sounds great." So, you know, we were like, fuck, yeah, let's do it. So the engineer.
Those magic moments. You
right?
know?
The engineer comes in and he says, "I better ask Albert." That was Albert Grossman, who owned the studio, and he had just broken up with Bob Dylan, their management talent thing. So the engineer calls Albert, and he comes back in and says, "Albert says if you're not out of here in the next 10 minutes, he's calling the cops."
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
So that's, you know, that's a great rock and roll story.
That is an awesome rock and roll story.
That would be great as a scene in a documentary. Absolutely.
Yes, it would.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
The super session that wasn't.
There's right. You got 10 minutes to vacate, buddy. So let's have a moment. I want you to yeah, do I'll Be Faithful.
I'll do a little bit of I'll Be Faithful.
Okay, cool.
I would be your water if your thirsty mouth was dry. I would be the sunshine when clouds were in the sky. I would stand there close beside you and be your only friend. 'Cause I have promised love forever, there will be no end. Ooh, I'll be faithful. Ooh, I'll be true. Ooh, I'll be faithful. Ooh, true to you. Yeah, baby.
Love that.
That's I'll Be Faithful. And anyway, you can imagine it goes on forever. And and when the voices are all doing the ooh, I'll be faithful, it's a big.
I'll be faithful. I heard it last night. I listened to it maybe 5 times.
It's a big sing along.
That's a good
the
one.
way Dusty did it was they did it in Memphis, and they did it a little bit more of an R&B version. The one I played is more like what we did, although ours was a pretty hard rock beat. You know, nowadays when I play it more that just like I did. It's like a guitar ballad,
Which I dig.
Yeah, it's great. And when you have
Stronger.
singers, it's angelic.
Yeah,
So that's nice.
I love that song.
Yeah. So anyway, you can see.
I gotta say, Ned, your music has a high re-listenability. It's like there's something about it, and I also noticed what you guys did with Cat's album when you guys mastered all of that. You did a very, you guys have a style that's noticeable as to the layering and the mixing of the music, so that the instruments are not clobbering the vocals. You guys are so tight on that. That's just that's the art. That's your however number of decades you've been in the business is so obvious on the way you've mastered all that. So that's really good stuff. Really enjoyed it.
Well,
I second that. Totally second that.
I appreciate that compliment, and that brings me to the Cat Beach moment, which was really interesting because
We were going to go to Jamaica, but why you got to do the Cat Beach?
Oh, well, I'll talk.
But okay, if you have to talk about Cat Beach.
I'm gonna go there, and we can go back and catch a little of Jamaica because there's a lot of great stories. But when I made the Ned album, I used an amazingly wonderful rhythm section. Dave Kemper played drums, who was a big studio guy out here. Bob Glaub, who's been a great studio player for many years and also goes on the road with all the big acts. He's great. My friend Steven Souls, who let me use his studio. Oh my God, and helped me to produce the album. He's my partner from Albright and Souls, then the Tidbits, then to the Ned album.
Yeah.
Gosh, there were guys like who played on it. My friend David Mansfield was from the beginning to the middle to the end of that story as well. And we're still, I'm still really good buddies with all of those guys, and they're all really gifted people who helped. Now, in your case, Miss Cat,
Okay.
I
was very blessed. Trust me, I get it.
Here it's kind of a funny story.
No, it really is. Go ahead and tell it. Tell it for all its real honesty.
Cat has a cousin by the name of Gardner Knight. Mm-hmm. And Gardner is an extremely talented guy in many ways, but one of his talents is as a recording engineer. He's a
totally agreed.
First-rate guy. He recorded and mixed the Cat Beach album, the first one. And the rhythm section on that was like the sublime experience. Herman Matthews, who's as good as it gets. Leland Sklar, who's one of my, these are all, by the way, if none of them played a lick of music, I would still be wanting to hang out with those guys all the time. Herman Matthews on drum, Leland Sklar on bass, Dean Parks playing all sorts of instruments.
Yes, everything.
Stayed behind.
You on keys.
Yeah, and
Ned produced it. Sorry.
Ned's producing in keys, and we had Gia and Kim come, and I occasionally jumped in with them and did backgrounds.
And who did percussion?
Kevin Ricard, who's like amazing player. We're probably leaving somebody out, but the experience was really, really, really great.
Shaq came in and he was interning at the time.
Yeah, then we made a second. We made a second round of recordings, which were some that like Get After, my favorite records I've ever played on or been associated with. I love making that record. It just everything sort of fell into place, and those guys are like mind readers. I played them the lick, and they were like, okay, and they just did it. We all kind of got behind the lick and made it be strong and
see
solid.
That's the magic when I see you guys doing that. I'm just a spectator. I had miserable 5th through 8th grade piano lessons, so I can't even touch any of that. I watch you guys, or musicians in general, when I watch you guys, the hidden communication is in a subtle undertone. You guys are watching and you're listening in the rhythm and everything else, and you guys know when to come in and when to come out. To me, that's utter magic. And I don't know if you guys realize that as much as being so close to it,
It was probably something, Tom, that because Tom and I have been friends since Miami, which is many, many years ago. I remember when we broached the subject of doing the album, and Ned says, I want you to have this group of people. And it wasn't questionable. It wasn't a thought pattern. It was, this is who you're going to get. And you're very lyric based. And I want you to have the A-listers to lift it up. And I recall feeling an intense anxiety, Ned, because I thought, I don't know if I can do this moment. But most people don't know this. I flew out to LA to work with you on a couple of things, and Dean Parks on a demo, and then we came back again and did that, and you came to Miami. The blessing behind this was, even though I was late for that first surprise recording session, I know, let's just say it, let's just go with it, and it was, and I blame that on LA traffic. So nobody.
It's actually a trademark.
It's a trademark. I was late for the session, but I walked in, and what an amazing group of people. So and even the night before, you and I, and a testament to you, Ned, Love Me Out Loud and Whole New Thing, we were trying to change the musicality of it. And while I'm performance-based and lyrics-based, hook-based, and and you do the rest of the lyrics, you just had this incredible golden ear to hear all of these other things that I didn't hear. And we were changing it the evening before, but when we walked in the next morning, or mid-morning, and I was very, very, very nervous, but it was such an incredible experience because you had built such a wonderful rapport with Herman Matthews, Lee Sklar, Dean Parks, and Gardner, and Shaq, and Gia and Kim came in later. It was just and Kevin, your friendship with them and your musical experience with them made it so that when I walked into the experience as a newbie, really, because my world was in musical theater and everything before, what a blessing.
Yeah,
Because
those guys, those guys are professionals, for one. At the very top of the list, they're professionals, but they're also human beings, and they're guys who respond. They knew we were onto something because they all responded. We got that album done really quick. Nobody labored over anything. It was all like, speak from the heart and do your thing, and that's what it should be.
Yeah.
And those guys are incredible people, and
they were on Get After It, Go to Work and Win. They were on everything.
And Soulshine Pizza, which Dan did such a beautiful job producing in Nashville. Leland was there. He was a common denominator, and Leland's a very valuable guy to have at a session.
Yeah, he is.
He knows how to make things work. So that's
100%.
Yeah.
And he's so easy to work with. So no matter where the stress level is or where it doesn't matter. He just brings everything down to this, hey, we got this mode.
Totally.
Well, I think,
those guys are confident for a reason.
Yeah. A lot of people that aren't in the industry might not fully understand what happens when you guys have to draft together a team. They have this image in their heads that it's like, the big bands, REO Speedwagon or Journey. You've got 5 fixed members to a band, and we're going to make this music, and that's how bands happen. They don't realize that I think that a huge amount of music that's produced is draft teams where you guys pull people together, and you basically create a mosaic of these instruments that is almost like, it's very much, I would say, to music, like movie directing. You're pulling these various snipers in to be that part.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something that I've found over the years, and I think a lot of producers will tell you this. You experiment till you find your go-to guys. And so, Dean, Lee, and Herman are go-to guys for me. And the more we played sessions together, because we've done a bunch of projects together, the more we did them, the more they enjoyed playing with each other. Dean, who is very understated for being the most recorded guitar player in the history of recorded music, played on more Grammy Award-winning records than anyone ever.
He's like 3 degrees of separation.
And he is like a scientist. Pardon me for interrupting. Yeah. He is like a scientist. To be in studio with him was really wild. Because it would be a perfect pass, and he'd say, nope, let's do another. Let's do it. And then he'd say, let me take this home and try. He's a scientist about it, but he's incredibly he's unreal.
Yeah,
go on.
Anyway, he's a guy that you want to say, what do you think, too? Because he's played on that many hit records for a reason. So I always defer and think like, well, let me think, who would probably know better about what we're doing right now?
Maybe Dean. Like, throw some stuff out there, Ned. Some things like Andrea Bocelli, I think is one. Beyonce, Michael Jackson,
Randy Newman. You name an artist.
Steely Dan. Insane amounts of.
He played with just about everybody. When Rolling Stone did their list of the 20 greatest guitar players, I think he was number 14, maybe number 11. And everybody, on the list all said, oh, Dean is the guy. He's not just a guitar player.
And not to sidetrack, but I will tell you this, to see Dean and Lee Sklar, so Dean Parks, Lee Sklar, and Herman in the same room, each one of them was awestruck by the other, and gave such incredible respect to the other. It was, to me, and because I've been in the industry long enough, so have you, Ned, so we see a lot of egos. And I was floored at the amount of respect each and every person, they gave you respect and each other respect. And it was, to me, it was, I will go with what you said. Even if they didn't ever pick up an instrument, I would still love them dearly because they're great people, but they had such high regard for each other. All of you guys, it was a joy for me. I don't want to sidetrack to me because, quite frankly, this is about you tonight. But I will say to you, it was a joy. Thank you, Ned. I owe you a debt of gratitude because to see that right off the bat was the best thing I could have seen.
Oh yeah. Oh no, you saw the best of the best, and that's really that's what I do things as I can, and you facilitated that, and you had the faith to facilitate it, and that was I think everybody respected that your commitment. And then I will say this, let me say it publicly. Cat Beach is the single greatest promoter I've ever seen. She works it like a dog on a meat wagon. She is really out there.
I'm on the pole.
And let me tell you, if you don't do that, nothing happens.
That's true.
If you don't get out there and do the hard, dirty work that no one else wants to do, it ain't gonna happen. So anyway, and congrats to you for that, Kat.
Thank you.
Now let me ask you,
as I said at the ISSA Awards, none of this could have happened without you. Period.
well,
Period. So we'll go with.
I thank you, and I'll take that as a great
Incredibly important. So, but we got to get back to you. Forget me for a minute. This is important. Tonight is a night for me to share your album.
Right.
Which, by the way, I've heard maybe 20 times. I keep listening to it. So I want to listen to it. There are a couple songs there we'll probably not be able to play tonight, but they like hit me. Yeah. And I won't talk about it because it's going to make me cry. Anyway, so Gator Rock is one of them. And so if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear a story behind before, and I'm not sure what you've queued up, Tom, but
what do you got, Tom?
I don't have any of them. There's a technical issue. I think we're better off doing them just if you can do them.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, let's see.
Gator Rock.
Yeah.
Or you know what? Let's not just go with Gator Rock, although Gator Rock's great. What one sticks out in your mind? I know there's stories on all of them.
You know, that's the thing about that album. Those songs span a long period of time. Some of them were written when I was working for Jeff Berry. Some were written when I was working for Alan Tucson. Some of them were written when I was writing for the entertainment company in New York. Many of them were written were not written for anybody. They weren't assigned writing. You know, we would get a call and say, "Hey, so and so is cutting an album. Write a song for him." And
you know what? This album, I would have to give you, is almost a sampler, a wide-ranging sampler of your talent. It's like a catalog of everything you can do. I noticed the blues, jazz, smooth jazz, gospel. You've got all of it in this album. It's kind of like a resume album.
It's blues. It's country. It's New Orleans. It's like what the.
I'll tell you. I think that record is like it just has this weird sort of magic to it where there was no rhyme or reason. I just said, like, I like this song. We cut, just so you know, I think we cut at least 28 songs to get the 10 that made the album. And by the way, and how I did it was really interesting. I sent it out to friends and I said, I'm trying to cut this down. Give me your favorite 10 songs. And so I took the aggregates, I aggregated all the scores, and the one that was consistently the most popular did not make the album.
Why?
It just didn't fit in the mix of things just right. Okay. But it lives today. I use the song all the time. I play it, you know, whenever because it's called the wedding song.
Oh.
And so I play it at weddings.
That would have worked. What are you talking about? There's
Yeah. So,
wait, love you so well. I've got to know. I'm sorry. It's going to freaking kill me not to ask this question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but tell me about Love Me. Honestly, I love that song so very deeply. I've listened to it maybe 30 times.
Well, let me tell you, I will tell you this story because it's one of my favorite stories about that song. So a dear friend of mine, one of my best pals, died of cancer. He was married to one of my favorite ladies, and they had just bought a really nice house. Was a very successful film editor and was even bucking up, I think, to become maybe a director. Anyway, he was diagnosed with lymphoma, and he was dead within maybe 6 to 8 months of the diagnosis. And so when he died, his wife, his widow, now remarried, but many years ago, she asked me if I would sing a song at his funeral. And so I sat down and wrote that song for my friend Battle. And it's a beautiful song. I'm not sure if I can do it.
It is.
But anyway, so let me tell you some more.
It's truly a beautiful song. I want you to know, out of your entire album, and I love all the songs, that's the one that I continuously listen to. And it even you telling me the story brings tears to my eyes because it's so beautiful.
Well, that's the one that was really, it has more to it. The song, I sang the song at the funeral for that guy, and everybody in the crowd was just bawling.
Absolutely.
I could barely get through it. Anyway, so we decided to record it. And that turned out to be the ballad rather than the wedding song, which was more popular. But that was about because it meant that much more to me. It was a song. And I will tell you another story of the Ned album and how I met Dean Parks.
Oh.
So I have one of my dearest friends is a gentleman by the name of Ian Underwood, who was in the Mothers of Invention with Frank Zappa, and then he worked on movie scores of so many movies, you know, from Avatar to Titanic.
Oh.
He worked on the biggest movie scores. He was like an amazing player. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Ian was my pal. We ran together. We ran distance. He was a marathon. We were both marathon runners.
Oh, you mean real marathon? Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that you've run like 23 marathons in your life.
34, but who's counting?
I'm sorry, who's counting? My bad. 23, 34.
I earned all of them.
Yes, you did.
You earned those ones.
Indeed. That's some battle scars, but go on.
Anyway, when I started the Ned album, I was talking to my brother, and he said, "What do you need? You know, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, you know, I really want to make a solo album because I have a bunch of songs that have never been recorded, and I would love to do it." And he said, "Well, what has to happen?" I said, "Well, you know, I need you know, somebody to finance it." And he said, "How much do you think you would need?" And I said, "I don't know, probably about 10 grand." 2 days later, I opened my mailbox and there was a check from my brother, who is not wealthy, for $10,000.
Holy, wow.
So I took that $10,000 and I spent about 5,000 of it recording 5 tracks, and just on piano, bass, and drums. Maybe not that much, but it was clear. So I played those tracks, which were just bass, drums, and piano.
Yeah.
And I played them for my friend Stephen Souls. And he said, "Well, what are you going to do now?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a lot of money left, so I'm not sure what." He said, "Come to my place. You can pay the engineer." And so that way, and the guys that played, I mean, Dean,
yeah.
So anyway, so Ian Underwood, back to Ian.
Yeah.
When Ian heard the tracks, he said, "Who's going to play guitar on the record?" And I said, "I think I don't know." And Ian said, "There's only one guy that can play guitar on this record." And I said, "Well, who?" And he said, "Dean Parks." And I said, "Dean Parks? I'll never get Dean Parks to play on the record. I don't know him." And Ian said, "He's one of my best pals. We've played sessions together for years. You call him and I'll tell him I'll tell him that I told you to call." Dean came and did, oh my God. By the end of the day that he spent with us, we had to like prop him up in a chair because he had worked so hard all day playing many different instruments on the record, and just like a workhorse, you know, he had just plowed through all the material and done everything. It was all amazing. That's how I met Dean. So, you know, the other funny story about Loving You So Well is there's a guy out here that's sort of famous because he worked on with the Beach Boys on Pet Sounds, a guy named Van Dyke Parks. And I was going to have Van Dyke do a string arrangement for it. And at the last minute, Van Dyke got sick and he couldn't do it. So I asked the drummer, who could I get? And he said, there's a guy, his name is Jimmy Haskell. I didn't know the name. And he said, go to him and tell him I told you to come. So I went to him. He had said to me, if I like the song, I'll do it. And I said, great, deal. So I took it, I played it for him one time through. He said, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So he organized the string players for a pittance. And he said, I'll wave my arms around. And so I'll write the arrangement and I'll wave my arms around. And I think he charged me $200 to do that.
Oh, wow.
Which was like, you know, he was like, I didn't know, but if you Google Jimmy Haskell, you'll see. Well, he did, just as an example, he did the strings on Bridge Over Troubled Water for Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh my gosh.
Which is one of the great string arrangements ever. That's Jimmy. So I went from, you know, a really good guy to
something I loved about that particular song is that you see someone because the song itself, out of all of it, and again, really gets you right in your gut. And so it just...
The song also starts with a lonely piano.
Yep.
And then it starts with the rhythm track. And then the rhythm track takes over.
Right.
And then at the very end, that lonely piano comes in just for that.
Yes.
That is the amazing and super gifted and one of my most favorite people, Ian Underwood. You see the threads here. You see how the thread works. You know, you see Stephen Souls.
Yes.
And you see. Now I didn't even mention a guy who did my demo for two guys that. So JR and JP. I have left out so much of the story. I'm sad, but I know we should. You know, don't wrap it up. You'll tell me, but. When I had to originally make the demo, I skipped the part of the story where I was deported from a Mexican jail.
I'm sorry. Yes, you skipped that, and I've never heard that one either.
I skipped that part of the story. But I was deported from a Mexican jail after spending 9 months in Mexico, living the high life and doing things I probably shouldn't have been doing. And the federales came in one day and said, you shouldn't have been doing those things. Come with us. And they took me to they put me in solitary confinement, which was not fun. Anyway, but eventually I got so sick in the jail, I got amoebic dysentery. And finally they had to deport me because I was probably would have died. I lost like 30 pounds and I didn't weigh that much to begin with. You see early pictures of me, I was thin. So at any rate,
I've never heard this story, Ned, so go on.
And where were we? Where was I on the?
Deported from a Mexican jail just knocked me right
We
over
never
my
got out of
forehead.
Mexico.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yes. Here's the thing. So I get deported from Mexico. That's after 9.5 months of fucking around, writing songs, and smoking weed.
Okay, that's honest.
And I could tell you stories that would make you go, "Holy shit!" I won't tell you about the hitman on the JFK job that I met in Playa Azul. But anyway, so I go. I'm going to. I've gotten deported. My family is thoroughly disgusted with me. I have not lived at home for quite a while, and they're not anxious to have me back. I'm broke, and so I move into a crash pad, which is what they called these things at the time. There were 9 guys in a studio apartment in New York, Upper East Side, and at night you would grab any place you could lie down and sleep. I used to use the bathroom to sing and play guitar. And a guy came in and heard me one night and said, "Who wrote that?" And I said, "I did." And he said, "Be ready. And, I want to get you recorded and take you to somebody." And that was JP, who was a big figure in my life, who's now also dead. But JP, the whole JP story is a whole other story. But JP took me to the record plant where I met JR. So that's Jimmy Pullis and Jim Reeves.
What time frame was this? What years?
I'm going to say it's probably 1968 or 69. Probably.
So we're in New York.
Yeah.
New York City.
Yeah, New York City. So I go, he picks me up at midnight. He has a ball of hash on a spike. We're in a cab in New York City, and he lights the ball of hash. The whole car fills up with smoke, and we're huffing it up. I get there, and I'm like on the moon. So I meet then JR, who's Jim Reeves, who's one of the ace engineers at the Record Plant Studio, which is the big studio.
This is like kind of the Big Lebowski kind of revisited.
It is kind of crazy. So anyway, I meet JR, Jim Reeves, who has recurred in my life. I was on the phone with him last week, but he's recurred in my life at several times. We ran a club together where I got to sit in with James Taylor, Bonnie Raitt, Linda Ronstadt, Jimmy Buffett, Dave Mason.
Are you familiar with a club up there? There's a guy here locally that ran or was part of a club up there in New York City during that time frame called Max's Kansas City.
I was the opening act at Max's Kansas City when Bob Marley made his first United States appearance.
Okay, I'm going to mention a name. Did you know a guy named Peter Crowley?
That I know that name, and if I saw him, I'd know who it was.
He's here. He's here in Sebastian. He's here.
Well, you can tell him I was really good buddies with Mickey Ruskin, who owned the joint, and Sam Hood, who ran the music.
He'll see this video. Definitely. I'll send it to him.
This is going to be great.
Yeah.
6 degrees of separation.
Max's was where you went and you'd see Andy Warhol and
the stories this guy has are fascinating. Just as I got to get you guys on the same interview.
The biggest stars of the art world all came to eat and drink to their heart's content, and at the end of the month they'd give Mickey a painting. When Mickey died, he was worth gazillions of dollars because he took paintings instead of money for the food and drink. He was loaded. Anyway, so I knew Max as well. Bob Marley, Bruce Springsteen. First New York was we were opening at that show. So we knew we were living the life at that time. And that was sort of when we were straddling where the Tidbits as a matter of fact, you asked about the Tidbits. The Tidbits was a group in Jamaica. Stephen and I had formed this group with Tali Jackson on drums and David Kapell on bass, Stephen Souls on guitar, and me on keyboards, and we were the Tidbits because no one could think of a name. And somebody said, well, shit, you can call them the Tidbits if you're any good. That would be fine. We said the Tidbits. We like that. So that's how we named ourselves. But anyway, we were playing at Max's Kansas City. And so a guy came in who heard us and said, you guys, we need to make a record with you. And he owned a record label. His label had Billy Joel and, God, that girl, what's her name? Melanie. Just Call Me Angel of the Morning. Yeah, and anyway, so we're playing there at Max's. We end our set. Everybody's, we're staying there. We're talking to the guy. Everybody's left the club or left the music room because it's over. And we sit with this guy and he says, I want to sign you guys. And I said, well, listen, I want you. He said, I love that song, Good Love is Hard to Find. So it was a song that I had written, and it wound up being on the Rolling Thunder Review. They opened every show with
the Bob Dylan Rolling Thunder Review.
Yes, the Bob Dylan Rolling Thunder Review. And it goes like, good love is hard to find. It's so easy to lose it. Hurts so bad when it's time to say goodbye. Good love is hard to find. Oh yeah, now good love is hard to find. Oh yeah, now good love is hard to find.
I love that.
Anyway, that song was another one of those magical songs that got us the record deal. I said to them, I hear that as a ska. I hear it as a reggae piece. And the guy said, okay, let's go to Jamaica. So we did. We used Jimmy Cliff's band, and we mixed. Wow. We had three guys from Jimmy Cliff's band: the guitarist, the percussionist, and the organ player. Oh. And then we played the songs and they played with us. And we had recorded half the album in New York and we recorded the other half in Jamaica. And the guy did it all with bad checks.
That's classic. That's classic. Sorry.
That's the mafia music way.
Mafia music way. I have.
There you go. Here's Holiday. All right, here we go.
I love this one. This one feels good.
I woke up this morning, thought it was the 4th of July. There was some fireworks exploding, going off inside of my mind. There was a marching band playing, people were parading. I guess I know the reason why. It's you that makes me feel this way. Every day's a special day when you're by my side. It's like a holiday. Every day with you is like a holiday.
Day, I can hear it. Every day with you is like a holiday. I'm not going to sing like you.
Well, that was a funny, things happen when you're making a record. You have a concept and then there's reality. And so we played that. I think that's one of the originals that I played piano with the drums and bass.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure what happened next, but at one point I thought, it would be really cool if we had a tap dancer who was tap dancing to it. So we called the guy and we called the guy and we said, hey, he's a famous tap dancer. Will you come and tap dance to our record? He said, oh yeah, no problem. Great, I'll do it. He came